This is the Bert Jansch Blue album. This is a legendary piece. This was the ace album to have, and have it on top of your pile of albums. Nobody had those albums in like a library or anything. They always had them in a big pile on the floor next to one of those terrible record players. And this was always on top. It made you look really trendy. Not only was the music extraordinary and original, especially strolling down the highway, everybody was slaving trying to learn slow, but everybody wanted to look like this. They said, how did he get to look like that, and where can I buy some? Not only were they trying to look like him, they wanted their flats to look like this. He's sitting on bare boards and all that. So Glasgow suddenly was full of completely empty houses with skinny people sitting in them playing Strolling Down the Highway. This is probably the biggest influence of any modern folky album.
Well, I was 19 when I made my first album. I made it for Transatlantic Records, which I sold it to Transatlantic Records for £100. And you can still buy it today, which is quite remarkable. It was recorded in Bill Leader's kitchen on a Revox. In fact, I made quite a few albums like that. I went to a folk club when I was about 14, after making several attempts at making a guitar. I went to this club and I actually had my hands on a guitar for the first time. And that was it.
Fancy singing a wee song?
Yeah.
Do the Strolling.
Strolling down
Yeah,
the road.
I've played it and I pretended to play it while the record was on. I want to see it be done for me.
People think that I'm crazy, Lord above I'm lazy. Sun shines all the long, the garlic spot is strong, while it's Joe on the down the highway. The club was the Half in the High Street. It was Hamish Imlach, Josh McRae, and of course Archie Fisher used to play quite a lot there. Brown and McGee, I saw play there, and Sonny Terry. I mean, I was hooked from that moment on, you know.
Well, that was the one, you know, Brownie and Sonny was here, and you were in that corner, I think, sort of watching his fingers and doing little bits. And he noticed and turned around and said, that's pretty good, you know, how long you've been playing? You said 6 weeks. See him turning back thinking, I don't believe this. Remember that?
Do you know much about that?
Hamish carved it out with his teeth one night.
My toenails while standing on my hands.
Acoustics have improved.
I was going to say, I found my favourite word playing Scrabble yesterday.
What?
Ham fatter.
It's not English, is it? It's not
Ham
English.
fatter. It's in the Chambers Dictionary. It means a third-rate minstrel. I'm going to change my name immediately. Jaime Ham fatter.
At that time, one thought it would never change, it would never be different, but it has changed. You know, we're all different, and in a way, it sort of highlights the differences for me between what we were then and what we are now. It's,
Even though the structure's changed, there's still a lot of ghosts about, isn't there?
Well,
yes, indeed, yeah, because I mean, the fact that, as I say, it opens the door on one's youth. It's the sense of all that hope and sort of musical faith and belief and exploration, I think. There's
But for
the newness
each
of
of
it
us,
all.
it was very different. Coming back to it is a bit of a shock, wasn't it?
Drawing water from the well, spilling over on the grass.
Anne was a young singer, and she was what was called a revivalist singer. Absolutely stunning. You know. They're actually so old, these things, and they were becoming alive from her singing.
Oh, the snow, it melts the soonest when the winds begin to sing.
I mean, it just rubbed off on you, and I suppose the marriage between the sort of bluesy guitarist and the traditional singer was born, really.
The young man tells me that me face he'll soon forget.
Anne Briggs, she was in the first wave, and I, influenced by people like that, was in the sort of second wave of things. It's an extraordinary album. You can see from the back here, but the songs, what people were doing then. They had Renardine and Willie O'Winsbury. But there's a lovely track on this, Black Waterside, which she taught to Bert at the House in Edinburgh. Bert did it, was heard by Jimmy Page. He did it. And subsequently all sorts of people have heard all sorts of material, like traditional material, and improved upon it, or improved as they see it.
I've read interviews with Jimmy Page, and he plays all this stuff, but he doesn't recognise it as being folk music. He just plays it, and it comes out as heavy metal in the end.
One morning fair to take the air down by Black Waterside. 'Twas in gazing all around me, 'twas the Irish lad I spied.
I actually used that kind of backing for quite a few folk tunes. And so I presume because it was so successful that people would recognise it straight away as being my playing.
Hamish Imlach, an extraordinary guitar picker and jelly baby eater. Hamish was famous before he started to make albums. Most people were getting a wee bit famous and were snatched up by record companies. Hamish already was famous, very, very funny, immensely popular, and started to make these transatlantic albums, which made him even bigger.
My baby left me, never said a word, nothing that I done, something that she heard, she's gone, she's sort of gone. Left me here crying 'cause she's gone. I wish that I was dying 'cause she's gone. She's sort of gone.
Hamish Imlach was the first person I ever saw play in the Hull. And I took lessons there by Archie Fisher. As a folk club, I think it was just as any old folk club ever was. But during the festival, it certainly came alive.
Sometimes I'm blue.
It was quite a big do, actually. And, I used to make the soup.
The songs that Auntie played are ghostly now. Today, youth finds its own particular magic.
We were 58, and this TV program came on. It's called The Guitar Craze. And then this young guy with a earring, sat and looked like a bombed out lot, who played fingerstyle Cry Me a River, which I proceeded to do.
The impression of Davy was that he was a wild flower that had grown somewhere on this bomb site all by himself.
But it was the type of thing we're trying to play, but he'd gone on stage ahead and played a pop song, Cry Me a River. It would take me the next year to get the chords of that alone. 6 months after he started playing the flaming guitar. That was the depressing bit when we met him.
One of the things that Davy did was take us away from the guitar heroes, the sort of finger-picking guitar heroes we knew at the time, and bring us into jazz chording. And some of his style was much more like piano playing than guitar playing.
Well, I'm leaving, mama, but I don't know where to go. Well, I said I'm leaving, Mama, but I don't know where to go.
I'm imposing a kind of classical jazz technique as the way it started off. And then he applied that away from the blues to traditional music.
That's a bit of Angie, which by Davy Graham. Most guitarists got into playing that at some point in their career. Sometimes it was the starting point. If you could play Angie, you'd made it. You could actually then stand up in a folk club and say, here I am.
In 1956, I used to come here quite a lot. My sister Jill used to work here at the Troubadour Club. And at the suggestion of Don Good, I think it was, an ex-gunsmith friend of ours, he said, why don't you do your first engagement? He said, start early, you'll be doing it all your life. So I did actually do my first date in this club downstairs.
Davy Graham, folk, blues and beyond. I bought this before the Bert Jansch. I remember buying it in a chemist shop in Glasgow. Someone on the radio had said it was a great album, and I found it in this big chemist store. I don't know if chemist shops in Glasgow still sell albums, but that's where I got it. And listened to all this Arabic stuff. I subsequently met and became friendly with Davy Graham, and he gave me an album. It's one of his more modern ones. Here we have it. This Smiley one. And he sent along with it the tablature, or music written for guitar. I thought, how dare you? I mean, it looked like the stuff written on the side of pyramids to me.
Well, Hamish Imlach got me my first Scottish tour back in the 60s, and he was the only person I'd ever met who'd met Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi. And incidentally, Sita Ram was his favourite tune. It comes from Gujarat in North India, in Hindustan. I was going off to India or Morocco on field trips collecting music in Greece and Turkey, Tunisia, and I suppose we all got on with our own thing, but the fusion music was what interested me most.
Davy's influence is extraordinary. I mean, single-handedly, he transformed the whole of the folk world, east and west. And he tuned his guitar to dadgad. Now, most Scottish and Irish guitarists have pinched the tuning and use it for playing Irish music and Scots music.
There used to be a jazz night, a folk night, a flamenco night, a dancing night, and a poetry night for each night of the week, most nights of the week.
You used to get 100 people in there, a tiny little place. And Paul Simon played there, Bob Dylan played there the week before I played it. And the girl, Anthea Joseph, her name was, she used to run the Troubadour in those days. The week I played it, she said, there was somebody on last week which remarkably similar to you. His approach was that, just get on and do it, and no presentation or anything like that. And it turned out to be Bob Dylan. And I asked her how much he got paid. It's 30 bob. At that time, I wasn't actually that serious about playing for money, really. You actually played because you had to eat.
When sadness fills your heart, sorrow hides the longing to be free. When things go wrong each day, You fix your mind to escape your misery. You're troubled, a young life hadn't made you turn to a needle of a death. One grain of pure white snow dissolved in blood spread quickly to your brain. In peace your mind withdraws. Your death's so near, your soul can feel no pain. You're troubled, a young life hadn't made you turn to a needle of a death.
Well, needle of death that at the time I was going around with a guy, I should say, called Buck Polly. When I met him, he was already using heroin. It was just the pressure, I think, of home life that eventually got to him. And he scored in the pub, and the next day he was dead.
To a needle of a death.
If you had to choose one man who did it, it was got to be Bert. The guy was so unique. I mean, he'd taken what I'd been copying Davy Graham records and trying to get these licks, and Bert had got them. You know, we'd all learnt Angie. You know, everyone had to learn that. All that. And we all could do all that stuff. You know, but Bert arrived using all that technique, but with incredibly original material and new songs that he'd written himself and really powerful, charismatic sort of presence on stage. Oh yeah, it just completely blew us away. You know, I mean, I was involved in organising different clubs, so I immediately thought, right, this is the guy, this is the man, you know. And he did it. He turned everyone on, I think.
Wiz Jones, my friend. Wiz didn't seem to get as big as everybody. He has led a kind of wispy life. He has come and gone. I've seen him since the 60s coming and going very wispily. He's been a great favourite of mine for years.
Well, all I'm doing is doing what I want to do. I'm only interested in playing the guitar and travelling.
Wiz Jones, he's an excellent player and he's so underrated. His songwriting, his guitar playing, and I mean, he should be a superstar, but he just isn't.
The first girl I loved, time has come, I'll sing of his sad goodbye song. When I was 17, I used to know you. Well, I haven't seen you now since many's the short year. Last time I seen you, said you joined the Church of Jesus.
I started out playing country and western music. Hank Williams really fired me, and I just discovered the whole acoustic folk thing by accident through the jazz scene. It grew out of the jazz scene. You know, people like Sonny and Brownie and Big Bill Broomsey came over on as part of the jazz scene. They play the intervals in jazz clubs. That's how, and Muddy Waters, you know, that's how I kind of got to it. I can remember I couldn't get into these clubs because I was a stupid hippie, you know, playing blues and stuff like that. And the scene was quite divided in those days, you know. I mean, it's better now.
I'm gonna sing a love song, you know I seldom do, so you better believe I mean what I say. Sing of all the good times on the road with you, and of how I love you still today. We were first together, you were but a child. I was a young man, careless as can be. There was nothing we couldn't do, no place we couldn't go. We were just young lovers and happiness was free.
Wizzy's roots are almost identical to my own. I think we can trace it back to Big Bill Broomsey, basically.
Remember all the people.
Every time I see Wiz play, he just knocks me out.
Remember all the songs we used to sing. The
the nights that we spent hungry in fields beneath the sky, the nights in silken sheets fit for a queen. Remember tea and oranges and the summer sun so red. Remember a winter's morning oh so sad, in a darkened hotel room on the Rue du Médecin, when you cried so hard for the child we never had.
There's Bert's second album. Brilliant. You can see by this time, the first one was such a success, he's bought himself some furniture in that flat. He's now, he doesn't have to play standing up for the rest of his life. He's sitting down quite, I think it's a better flat actually. It's got the wee fancy windows with the wee leaded squares on it. Lovely. I've never seen this album before. I think it's been reissued with a different... Oh, it's extra. This was Transatlantic's label's sort of a economy, budget. That's the word they use. This was their budget label before they brought out a label called Freebie, which I was on. It wasn't free though, they just called it Freebie.
It's for notation, basically, for writing. That's how I got into it, was to actually be able to write my own stuff down. Although I can read music, I'm pretty slow, so I mean this saves me a hell of a lot of bother, you know. The screen here, the music comes up automatically from the pickup here, which is a MIDI converter, converts the noises at the pitch of the string. The interest in writing music, I mean in notation, didn't come until I was much later. In fact, almost until I met John Renbourn, you know, because that sparked off the interest.
John Renbourn. He's an excellent guitarist, a very neat, clean and tidy picker. And I knew I would never ever play like that, and I certainly had no desire to play Lady Nothing's Toy Puff. I mean, how do you introduce it for a start? But I knew, given time, I could look like that. And I did. And I subsequently met him, and he told me that he'd been mistaken for me. And that was enough for me. I could throw my guitar out the window. I cared not a jot. The lovely neat and clean picking style that he has sits incredibly well besides Bert Jansch's playing. And together, I think there's no double act on earth I would travel further to see.
Nice to see you. Thank you. Good. Well, I've known John about 30 years, I think. Although the band got together for 7 years, the Pentangle, and after that it broke up, and it must have been at least 15 years before I had any contact with John.
Yeah, so
I'll put the kettle on. Right. Now we get together and do the odd rehearsing, and usually in the kitchen. So, how are you? All right?
Not so bad.
Yeah. So, what we're going to play today? Practice?
Yeah. Shall we look through the last ones we were working on? Some of the stuff that's written down.
Yeah, that... what do you call it? First Light, was it? So you've got the music with you.
Pages and pages of it.
Yeah.
This looks like the definitive. What do you think?
On a castle built of stone, with ivy clinging to the walls, house martins busy feeding the young beneath the eaves, so busy they don't know that you are there. So peaceful in the garden, not a worry, not a care, so beautiful it surely cannot be, but not for the likes of you and
me. It's a possibility.
Let's try that.
Inhuman possibility.
By the time this album appeared, Bert had become wealthy beyond belief, had copious amounts of furniture, had got curtains, nice fishy netty ones for the window, and brown ones for the side, and he had so much furniture he would invite people round. See, this John Renbourn's popped round to play a truly exotic game. He'd obviously got intelligent when he got wealthy and got these extraordinarily complex games. None of us could work out what it was. We thought, maybe they're dope dealers, sharing pills. Or maybe he's taken to painting Smarties. We didn't know. But what we did know, he'd moved on and become very jazzy with this fellow here. Pictures, and we have an extraordinary one here. Ralph McTell, Whiz Jones, Pete Stanley. Whiz, of course, is a legend. Pete Stanley, the best banjo picker Britain ever produced. And Ralphie.
I mean, I've always had the travelling in me, you know what I mean? And the fact that I can actually travel and play music at the same time is wonderful. But even before I was a pro, I used to hitchhike and travel around Europe and so on with a guitar. It's a great life. I'm not complaining about it. You get absolutely exhausted. But the only thing that worries me about exhaustion is the fact that I may not play well. Well, I think the first thing we felt about knowing that there were other people, especially from Scotland, is how did they know? I mean, we thought it was an exclusive thing that had grown up as a subculture in London. Well, certainly I did. But obviously Bert is the first Scot that I remember encountering in London and being dragged into a record shop in Croydon by a pal of mine saying, you've got to hear this guy, and putting the record on and sitting in the booth and listening to it. And clearly Bert was just head and shoulders above everybody else. As far as he had the lot, you see, he couldn't just play the guitar, he actually was that person.
No matter how you try, my love, you cannot save a flower that has jaded. Our love was like the blossom born in my time, but now it's faded. Though I will always love you, the road ahead is set and I must follow. It beckons ever onward, please hurry, don't look back. Each season calls and is waiting in the wings to take a stand and dance upon the stage. A restless child so eager to begin, he comes rushing ever headlong like the wind. Time he hurries on, he doesn't stop to say hello. He leaves only memory.
I think it is a fragile medium and deserves respect, because it's not something you just pick up and do. I mean, you have to sit around for hours and hours and, you know, teaching two hands to work independently of each other. I mean, it's complicated, and yeah, I think it's fragile.
Learn to play the guitar was a good way out, you know. And it was like a front, you know, you had the guitar like a crutch and you could get away with it. And that was all just part of that beatnik thing, you know, on the road, Jack Kerouac, you know, shoot off to Paris and busk, you know, that was what you did.
You didn't care about money or anything like that. It was irrelevant. or politics. You were so green you didn't realise that, you know, you were actually often in a very dangerous position, you know, which I don't think that kids nowadays would do.
Oh, Bert Jansch with Sitar, number 8 in the folk charts. You see, they had folk charts. What's happened to this? Where are our disc jockeys? Where's the acoustic disc jockeys? Huh? Why do these people never get airplay?
Some players become make money at it, and they add a lot to the musical world. Others just add a lot to the musical world, but never actually earn any money at it.
Actually, I knew. When you're young, you are sort of told that it's a hard road to hoe. But you don't believe it, and so you do it anyway. And by the time you realize, wait a minute, this really is a hard road to hoe, then it's too late to stop. And it's a good thing, because otherwise there would be no musicians. When I was starting to play and becoming interested in really developing as a finger picker, there wasn't that much that I heard of American players that I was that impressed with. But one of the early records that I got hold of that did impress me, as far as people who were just a few years older than I was a Vanguard record by Bert Jansch that was called Lucky 13. Now this was actually, I guess there was parts of 2 or 3 different records, but in a large part it was Bert's first record. Now this, and it's the only one that was, well, that was around in those days in America, obviously. And I think that Bert, even with that one release, had more of an influence on a lot of the really good finger pickers of my generation than any American of his generation did.
Dylan. That's 1968 Melody Maker. What? 1962. Philip Saville, the producer, brought Dylan to Britain to be in a play for BBC. I mean, it sounds ridiculous now, but 1962, and they filmed it at the Troubadour Madhouse on Castle Street. Now, Dylan was brought to play Lenny, which was eventually played by David Warner because Bob Dylan's English accent was so appalling, but they recast him as Bobby, who sort of hung around the apartment playing guitar and annoying people. On the night before the shoot, he was fiddling around in Philip Saville's flat, writing a song. And he said, "Oh, what's that?" He said, "That's one of my new songs." He said, "Oh, we could include it in the show." This is all that's left from the play. There's no film. It's in a bin somewhere or burned. But the wee song he was playing with is listed there. Blowing in the Wind. Nice little number.
How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man?
Yeah, I remember that.
Didn't Jill used to run a club there?
Either Jill or Bruce done it, I can't remember. I remember playing there once, yeah.
I remember I took Bob Dylan in there. The first and only time I ever met him.
Well, did you get the job to show him around or something?
Yeah, with me and Bill Leader. Took him there down to the Roundhouse. Got that one at the end of Water Street. It's not there anymore.
Well, Alexis Corner's place, yeah. Did he play? Did he go in and play, or was he just... Yeah.
It's too stoned.
Too stoned. Well, Bobby. So it's still here then, Ivers?
I'll get some strings on there.
There was a lot going on in Soho. I used to run a club in the Scots House. The King and Queen had a folk club. There was the Cousins Folk Club. And down the Cousins you used to get a whole load of faces like Roy Harper, Jackson C. Frank would come by. And Ralph used to show up and do an all-nighter or two. Sandy Denny, she could stop you in your tracks, you know, if you hear her singing. And also Al Stewart used to pop in there, the Cousins Folk Club.
After these years.
25 years. I mean, this is my youth coming back.
Yeah, right. Sentimental journey. But I can't even remember the way.
I can remember the way to find
I can.
the cousins, I lived with the cousins. They're there every night of my life for 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, the cousins, no, that was a place to play, or a place not to play, really. It all depends on how you look on it. I used to run an all-nighter session, which was pretty chaotic, really. I mean, they had somebody booked, but when he played is irrelevant. And people used to hitchhike from all over the country, all over Europe, actually, to, you know, in their sleeping bags in the corner, and just sort of, when they were awake, listen to whatever was going on. And, if there's nothing going on, they'd go back to sleep.
Come on, Bert.
Oh, memories. Oh, that hasn't changed anyway. Staircase is exactly the same.
I remember that.
You can imagine seeing the old man sitting there at the door, you know, with a trilby hat on.
It looks more narrow than I remember it, probably.
We're all a bit wider now. But that song you wrote, Bert, was great, about coming up out of Cousins on Sunday morning.
Daybreak.
Daybreak, yeah, I think
It's daybreak, the all-nighter's faded to a close. The last of the focus rises and goes as the shock of the morning sun blinds your eyes. It's Sunday morning.
So, Bert, this is another place that you took Dylan to, isn't it? Yeah, I saw Big Bill Brunsey here in Muddy Waters when Alexis Corner was running it.
Tomcats and padding through the streets, and the vagrant in the doorways wrapped in a dirty sheet. Such an air of unreality. You can
push them all. They're all out.
On a Sunday morning.
Is it really?
Yeah. Well, your first gig.
This is my first gig. Here it is.
Twice that I must be bound this day for London town. I do believe my fortune's waiting there.
I started playing here in February of 1965, and we got paid a percentage of the door. And it worked out, if it was full, to about £3. And believe it or not, I used to live on that. That was my week's wage.
Catch a boat to England, maybe to Spain. Wherever I've gone now, wherever I've been I've gone. Wherever I've gone, the blues run the game. Send out for whiskey, send out for gin. The end-room service Sunday night. The end-room service, baby. The end-room service down the living. Your life is in.
Jackson Frank. Late 60s, early 70s. The hottest thing in town. Everybody loved. This is the only album I ever heard of his. And then I never heard of him again. He was one of those guys everybody tried to sound like. Really good, smooth American picker.
I was roped in to play second guitar on a track called Yellow Walls. And the whole album was done for £60. There were 6 sessions, each running an hour.
Just like anything, to sing, to sing, to sing is a state of mind.
Jackson was an extraordinary guy. He only produced one album, but it had such an effect on singer-songwriters and the way they actually wrote songs. The whole album is actually beautiful. Really fine songs on that album. It was produced by Paul Simon.
Paul Simon. Before Simon and Garfunkel, and before Paul Simon that came after Simon and Garfunkel. Around the 60s, a lot of Americans came to London, came in around, mixed with all the sort of British singers. A lot of the Scottish boys had moved down to London by that time, Bert and all these guys. And they all mixed rather jollily. And the Americans were learning those English styles and British styles of playing and stuff. Stealing stuff, you know, the kind of thing. Scarborough Fair. Let us never forget Scarborough Fair. Anywhere you have a gathering of British folkies, they go, yeah, Bob Dylan, Paul Simon, Scarborough Fair. Who did Bob Dylan do? Oh yeah, Dominic Behan. Was it? He wrote the Patriot Game, and from that he wrote da 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 da. I mean, who cares really? They're all deeply influenced by one another. Paul Simon, outstanding.
Are you going to Scarborough Fair? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Remember me to one who lives there, for once she was a true love of mine. I never worked with Paul Simon. I ran into him a few times. I never knew him that well. If you like, Scarborough Fair was my big tune at the time, and he got to hear about it, and he wanted to know it. And I basically wrote down the thing for him. And when he came round to dinner one night. In fact, Tom Paxton came round to dinner, and Paul Simon was in tow. And Paul wanted the words and the tune and the whole thing, and he got it. And ate his dinner and went out next day and copyrighted it. Thank you. But it's a traditional song. He took it. I've probably felt slightly aggrieved that he'd taken my way of doing it, but yeah, I'm still alive. I suppose it left a nasty taste in my mouth for a long time. And to a certain extent, if pushed, it probably still does. Because cut me, I bleed.
Paul learnt a lot of stuff, as did Dylan. Dylan learnt a lot of stuff from Martin. All stuff like Masters of War, he learnt from Martin Carthy.
He came over in '62 to do a play for BBC called Madhouse on Castle Street. And in those days, there were maybe half a dozen clubs in London. And I was involved in I was involved in 4 of them, varying degrees. And he turned up at one called the King and Queen in Foley Street. Mind you, any American musician passing through town would go to any one or all of those clubs. And I recognised his photograph. He'd been on the front of Sing Out. And I asked him if he fancied singing, and he did. Then he came down the Troubadour the next night. And he sang a lot, and we became fairly matey around about that time. He was a good lad. He was a good lad. Good singer. Good writer. Should go far.
Running from home, breaking ties that you'd grown, catching dreams from the clouds. The city sounds burn your soul, turn your head to the cries of loneliness in the night.
Well, I'd heard Bert's music years and years before, really, and always admired his playing and the songs, you know. And I used to put on a Lennon record or Randy Newman or Charlie Mingus or something. There'd always be an album of Bert's there. So when we finally met up about 4 years ago or so, we just started to play together, and we've been gigging ever since. Done hundreds of gigs, really. Had some great times, you know.
love, love without fear and tyranny, rain and rain on my stone. And like the timbers burning, like a sign of the devil, devil take up my life. You can cut my hands, but I still keep singing, singing till the day I die. Oh, let me sing, let me live, love, my friends alone, my sweetheart beneath the stars above. Let me sing about love, love you can feel the love, you can hold it to your breast. Like I want some high mix, good to be alive. Ain't life to live your life without crying, singing till the day you die. Ah, let me sing, let me live, love, my friends are mine, and my sweetheart beneath the stars above.
Well, I first went to the States with the band, Pentangle, and I've been there quite a lot since then. The Pentangle story is it's a story that I've told many, many times. We got together, myself and John Renbourn, because we were sharing a flat in London, and we used to do odd gigs together, but not seriously. And we just thought, oh, let's start a club of our own, you know, away from the cousins and all that, and invite various players to come down and actually play with us. And that way we ended up with a whole band.
Jansch, Renbourn, McShee, the Horseshoe Hotel, 1967. Peggy Seeger, Tom Paley, Jerry Loughran, and Roy Harper. Boy, these people are so old. I was about 7 then.
Jackie was the only singer, female singer that we ever engaged.
Baby, how you make me angry, burning all the flame inside. Each time I think I've got you cornered, you slip the noose away, you ride. Seems that I'm always chasing love on the other side of the merry-go-round, so near, so far. Wishing I'm forever wishing, wishing my life away. Wishing for the chance to hold you, I'll love you till my dying day. Seems that I'm always chasing love on the other side of the merry-go-round, so near, so far. Baby, if I ever catch you, I'd lock you up inside my heart. Lover, you would be my prisoner forever, we would never part. Seems that I'm always chasing love on the other side of the merry-go-round, so near, so far.
The very first Pentangle gig was the Festival Hall, and that was a sellout. For the next 7 years, it was continual tour after tour, gigs, and making albums, which I don't recommend to anybody. It is not a way to live. And eventually the band split up because of it, you know, just couldn't take it anymore. And it still threatens to come back every now and then, and it will occasionally.
Baby, how you make me angry, burning all the flame inside. Each time I think I've got you cornered, you slip the noose away, you ride. Seems that I'm always chasing love on the other side of the merry-go-round, so near, so far.
There was a gap for a while after the band broke up, but then I was brought over by John Shalhoub to do an album for him.
Acoustic guitars, 12 strings, Martin guitars, banjos, compact discs and tapes, and all kinds of musical stuff like that, mostly related to acoustic music and acoustic guitar and banjo.
John and Rick, his brother, all their lives had been wanting to produce an album of mine. You know. So John and Rick got me over there, and they said, would I do it with Albert Lee? And I said, yeah, why not?
We talked about the Blue album, the More Furniture album, the Rich, Lots of Furniture album. We even dallied a little while on the Budget album. Well, this is the Handsome album, where he seems to have joined an obscure order of monks or wore a shirt that definitely wasn't his. It has Heartbreak Hotel, my favourite Bert Jansch track in recent years, and he plays on this with Albert Lee, the best American country picker there is, who just happens to be an Englishman.
I always loved American music, and throughout the 60s I wanted to be here, you know, and I don't know why, I always picked on Los Angeles. It seemed like there was a lot of great stuff happening in Nashville, but I always thought, like, Los Angeles is the place for me.
If you take over my track, would you still find me carrying the pots I'd made, following behind? Yes, if I were a carpenter, you were a lady, would you marry me anyway? Have my baby. Just save my love for loneliness, just save my love for sorrow. I've given you my holiness, please give me your tomorrow.
What I like about Albert, he does little gigs up and down the country, which no real superstar should be doing, you know.
Recently I've been playing at a local bar, you know, with a little country band. It's been great
You keep
fun.
cropping up in various little pubs all over the place. So.
Yeah, well, I've been going back to England once or twice a year. I've got a band there that I work with, Hogan's Heroes, and you know, when things are slack here, I'll give them a call,
Yeah,
and they line up a tour. I just show up with my guitar. It's great.
If your baby lives here, you got a tale to tell. Take a walk down on the street at Heartbreak Hotel. Feels alone, as alone. Feels alone, I could die.
This is extraordinary. It's an interview with Neil Young in the Guitar Players magazine. Among the guitarists you've encountered, who left the biggest impression? Acoustic guitar, Bert Jansch, best in the world. For electric guitar, it would be Jimi Hendrix. Well. But Bert's favourite is Brownie McGee of Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry. He's had the most extraordinary career since the 1940s. Started with Blind Boy Fuller, rambled with Woody Guthrie, Big Bill Broonzy, all those people, and eventually ended up influencing all these acoustic guitarists in Britain. I've often wondered, what would they be like now if there was no Brownie McGee to influence them?
I used to love listening to Brown McGee, and particularly when they could see him in the flesh at the House. I missed out on Big Bill Broonzy. I mean, I know people like Whiz Jones and that have actually met him in real life, and they're always envious of that.
In London, I saw Big Ben. In Scotland Yard, in a little square they call Soho. In Scotland, everything was fine, and the water tastes just like wine. But I want you to know There's some great people in Glasgow. Oh, well, yeah, when I arrived in England, it was 1958. And the boat landed in Southampton. I didn't know what to expect. I thought it was just, you know, I'm getting off a boat, never been on a boat 6 days. When I got there, the bands was playing and the music was raving and the camera was flashing and I was ducking my head and saying, excuse me, sorry, who's it behind, what you want? And they said, you, what you want me for? And I thought I was in the way. You, and they kept trying to make pictures of me. And I said, nobody knows me here, everybody wanted pictures of me. I was very arrogant about it, but I had never had the red carpet before. And so when Chris Barber got to me, he says, Brownie, this is all for you. For what for, you know? He said, well, they're welcoming you here to the shore. I went to Big Bill to tell the truth about it. There wasn't no invitation to England by anybody else because Bill said, I won't be able to go anymore, Brownie. So we went to England for Big Bill, not knowing what it was. Bill didn't tell me how he was going to react, and he didn't know. He said, they'll love you. That's all he ever said. They'll love you over there. And I'd never been out of the country, never been nowhere. And I just couldn't believe it could happen. I'd never been appreciated in America, I thought, which I hadn't been. And nobody thought anything of the blues, which is America. America is the blues is America, and I am the blues. So I didn't feel like I should go anywhere else until America was understanding it. If they understood that, they'd understand me. And when I got there, it was altogether a different thing in '58. I don't know where I'm going, but I do know this is the way I go. Yep, this is where I live, where I've been since '74. Walk on and on and on and on and on and on. I'm gonna keep on walking till I find my way back home. Let me hear you, Bert. Go ahead and hit yourself. Yeah. Walk on now. Let me tell you this. My suitcase is packed. My trunk's already gone. I don't know what in the world I'm sitting around here waiting on, but I can walk on. I got to walk on. I'm gonna walk on and 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 on. I'm gonna keep on walking till I find my way back home. One more time. I'm gonna keep on walking till I find my way back home. Let's say it a little softer this time. I'm gonna keep on walking till I find my way back home. Listen, I'm gonna try to whisper. I got to keep on walking till I find my way back home. I ain't gonna say nothing, Bert. I'm just gonna go through the motion. Watch me. What did I say? What did I say? What did I say? Walk on, walk on, walk on, just walk on, walk on, walk on, walk on, walk on. I'm gonna keep on walking till I find my way back home. Hey, 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 hey. Walk on. What else can you do? That's a good now, baby. Don't forget that walk home.
I heard body rumbling, and then I looked around. Was it northern and a southern, and that'll going down. Woo!
Yeah, how long was you and Sonny together?
From the beginning of time until the ending of Sonny's life. 35 years to be exact.
A long time.
Yeah, a long time to be with a man, wasn't it? I started in Harlem, playing on the streets together, me and Sonny. And we built a thing there. People began to realize that, and we went to the village together. And then Sonny began to sing his songs. I began to sing mine. It became more and more and more. And they began to think more and more we were a team, but I never told them it wasn't. They kept Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry. We never had a contract. Went to England as Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry. We never had a contract between us. No. And we made money. We had ups and downs, twists and turns and joys and sorrows, but we never had a rehearsal. Why rehearse and play something else?
Yeah.
So music is to be played, not read. And our best performance was when we were rehearsing. It's on the stage.
Studying about the woman I love in California. I show God will walk, you know. Long, long way, man.
Two wrongs make a right. Listen to me now, it's history. Two wrongs make a right, providing you make the wrongs at the same time. It's undeniable that you can't. And that was a policy that I followed. Yeah. If he played the wrong chord, I played the wrong chord. It got to be right. And we played that in life. And you can lay down now, and I can sit down and tell you every mistake that we made, but we made them at the same time. When we played, we never played 8-bar blues. We played 7-bar blues, 13-bar blues, 11-bar blues, 9-bar blues. But we did it at the same time. Made it a perfect setting. So that become the dinner, the dessert, the beginning and the ending of a concert. Two wrongs make a right, provided you make the wrongs at the same time. It's come to reach perfection. Ever Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee until the day we quit. So many ways God knows that a man can get the blues. Just gonna tell you one or two of them. So many ways that a man can get the blues. Telephone, a telegram, either mailman will bring them to you. I wanna tell you something. I'm living in Bluesville. I'm living on Blues Avenue. Sad place to be. Lord, I'm living in Bluesville, living on Blues Avenue. I can't blame the mailman because he left me with those partial post blues. Play the blues.
Comparing this to where I live in Hammersmith.
One more time.
Well, after more than 30 years of playing the guitar, and he was almost the first blues in real life player I'd ever seen at close range, as close as this is to me. And ever since then he's been an idol. I mean, he's been revered by me, you know. And to play with him was just an extraordinary sensation. I mean, I never ever thought I'd ever play with him in my life, you know. And I'm very, very proud to be able to have done so, you know. If I'd never known music, if I'd never gone to the Howe Folk Club, I would still be a gardener now, I should think. Because I was so entrenched in gardening from the age of 5, because my brother was a nurseryman, right up till I was 15. And it was a way of life. I figure I'm a very solitary person anyway. I think you have to be a musician on the road. You have to be aware of yourself and your own solitude, you know. Because although you like the experience of the club and the atmosphere of the club, as soon as it's all over, you want to be by yourself. You know? But that may be a throwback from the gardening days, I don't know.
Like a bird on the wing, so low, my heart I will sing, so low. But when cold winds do blow, it's then I must go in search of the sun and sweet water, so long. I've been on the road so long, been tired and cold so long. I've been to the south where the winds they are warm, traveling that road of no return, so long.
Yeah. Have a good time. Walk on. Keep the faith. All men count, but none too much. So long.